Hey everyone, this is the ThinkEnergy podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Sige from Hydro Ottawa. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Well, the ThinkEnergy podcast isn't your ordinary energy show. Every 2 weeks, we take you on a tour and discuss, through a communication lens, some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the ThinkEnergy podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the ThinkEnergy podcast. So here's today's big question. Can we stop the aging process? Has someone found a fountain of youth? No, I'm not talking skincare. I'm referring to an industry faced with a real aging challenge, the utility sector. With over 160,000 kilometers of underground cables in Canada that will eventually age out, a preventive approach to better understand the conditions of those underground cables before failing would be an asset. No one wants an outage due to a cable failure. In this episode of ThinkEnergy, my guest is Jim Pegg, who leads infrastructure product and services at Envari Energy Services. Jim, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Let's start by telling our listeners who Jim Pegg is.
Sure. Well, I guess quick background on me. I worked the last 13 years in the utility industry, various roles from asset management to substation work, distribution design, and recently jumped over to our private affiliate here at Hydro Ottawa, which is known as Envari.
Cool. Listen, what attracted you to the utility sector?
Well, there's always lots of answers to that type of question. I guess as a kid, I always liked to take apart radios and things like that, and growing up I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had electrical class in it, and enjoyed that quite a bit. Did that all the way through high school, and at the same time I guess my math skills were okay, so went into that sector, and in the background my father worked in the utility industry his whole career, so there's the kind of dad was successful. Wow, that seems like a pretty great path.
Now help me understand what cable testing technology is and how it's applied.
Sure. Well, I guess to back it up in terms of cable testing, there's lots of different technologies out there. There's things that have been used for years, and typically those types of cable testing apply a high voltage of some sort, looking for the cable integrity, trying to decide if is the cable in good condition or poor condition. Are there faults? Are there things that are taking that cable and setting it up for future failure, which is going to impact the reliability of a distribution system? In our case, we have a cable testing technology that was developed by the NRC over the last number of years.
Who's NRC?
So the National Research Council of Canada, and a lot of very smart people, I'll say, okay. Much smarter than myself. And they developed this technology that allows us to test the integrity of a cable's insulation, looking for water treeing in that cable. So if you picture a tree out in the subdivision, now imagine that very small, like a micro-sized tree, made up of water in the insulating jacket of a cable. If that water tree gets large enough, eventually it'll turn into an electrical tree, and then you get a fault on that cable, a failure point, so to speak. So they've developed this technology that allows us to test for that without applying a high voltage to that cable, so we don't stress the cable in the test. And it's also a very quick test, which is a huge benefit in the asset management world. You can get lots of data to support your asset management plans.
Who would actually be using or be calling you? Like, who would be calling you for this type of
Sure.
service?
So anyone that owns medium voltage XLPE cable or tree retardant XLPE cable. I'm getting so technical here, right?
What is that? I'm your grandmother.
Yeah,
Help
fair enough. So there's distribution systems, utilities, that provide power to customers out in the distribution system. Yeah. And some of that power distribution is underground. A lot of residential neighborhoods, some commercial areas, People are mostly familiar with an overhead line. So they're
Yeah.
driving down the road, you see pole lines. Some people don't like the look of them. Some people, like myself, love to see them because us engineers are a bit weird like that.
Yeah.
But there's also a large network of things underground that people don't see. And that network underground, you have to maintain and predict failures just as much as the overhead system. So distribution cables that are feeding transformers and subdivisions. So that's on the utility side. But there's also the whole industrial commercial side of things. People that own campuses or facilities that are making use of that medium voltage cable, they also want to be able to have a good maintenance plan and an asset management strategy to
When
maintain
you say
those
campus, Algonquin College,
Sure.
Ottawa University?
Sure. So here in Ottawa, there's lots of different government campuses.
Okay.
There's school campuses, hospital campuses. You might have things like, for example, the Canadian Tire Center.
Okay.
There's large underground cables that feed that. Those would be some pretty key cables to test. And if you're listening, we should come out there and test them.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, so how has your team brought this concept to market? Like, we know that emerging technologies like this one here need solid partners, like you were just talking about the NRC. Are there other partners? Like, how do you guys bring this to market? Like, do you have all that skill set, that brain power within, or you need to go out?
So the key piece here is it's backed by the National Research Council in terms of the technology. So that gives it the credibility in the
marketplace.
In the marketplace, yeah. So past that, the current business model that we have is we go into a company or into a utility and say, listen, here's the testing, here's how it can benefit you from
Into
an
a
asset
utility.
management plan.
So you would actually, reach out to other utilities
Absolutely.
within Ontario,
Absolutely.
Canada, whatever.
We've been to different conferences to show people this technology. We've done demos at many utilities, phone calls. We actually have, if you go to our website, Envari.com, you can sign up for a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter, which will come out and give information. It's a great way to actually find some information on the cable queue testing.
Okay.
And essentially from there, we go to these utilities. We have engineers in-house that go and perform the actual testing, and we'll work with utilities and their crews to perform the switching on the circuits to allow, because the cable needs to actually be isolated to do the test. Often people have a looped distribution system in the utility sector anyway, where they can avoid taking a customer outage. So you can do the testing without having an outage. If you have a system that's more of a radial system, then you need to notify your customers, take an outage to do the test. But the test itself literally takes about a minute to do the testing, and it takes usually around 10 minutes to half an hour to do the switching and so on. So you can test usually in the range of 10 to 12 cables a day in a typical utility setting. A lot of utilities are using it also for substation egress cables because they're critical. Right? That's a heavy load. So the business model right now involves us providing that testing. We've also partnered with other companies that can provide the linemen and that expertise to do the switching, so we can do a full turnkey option. And in some cases, there's utilities, and this is more the model we're moving towards eventually, is to allow utilities to lease the equipment and do the testing themselves. We provide the week of training, and they would be able to go out and do that testing themselves and continue to do the testing through their system, as well as working. The last one is with what we would call a channel partner. So someone who we would train to be just as familiar with the test equipment as ourselves, to be able to go out and do the testing for different organizations that they work with.
Just to clarify for our listeners, you did talk about, I heard Envari,
Yes.
and you did talk about cable queue. So is it safe to assume the cable queue is the product, and Envari is the actual company who provides that product too?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Envari is our company, and Cable Queue is one of our services, our products and services of many.
Okay. Well, on that note, in marketing, we're always talking about a USP. What is your unique selling proposition? What makes this technology unique? What problems are you trying to solve for the customers? And again, what I would ask you is, I'm your grandmother. So help me understand, like,
Sure.
what would they actually gain from doing that? You've covered it, but let's bring it down a level so people could actually just very quickly.
So imagine you're at home and you're my grandmother, so you've got a cold.
Okay.
We want to be able to test to see that cold and what stage it's at, so it doesn't turn into pneumonia. Because once you get pneumonia, if you get pneumonia down the road, that could turn into something worse and result in the cable world, a failure. Okay. So essentially, we're doing early detection of issues, so it allows for, again, going back to that asset management system, allows people to prioritize their spending on their cable and their distribution systems.
Very cool. Thank you. I really like that analogy. Jim, here's my last question. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, I'd have to say the aging infrastructure that's out there right now, if not properly managed, I think every industry is seeing this, whether it's roads, bridges, utility infrastructure. Because of the large amounts of growth that happened in the past, right now we're at a situation where people need to really manage their assets and be able to prioritize their spending to avoid having those huge, what I would call, rate impacts to customers. Customers right now in the world, electricity is essentially a part of life. People need it, but we have to be able to keep the cost of that electricity in mind, and being able to prioritize spending, whether it be with cable assets or any other assets. You have to try to levelize that and have a good 5, 10, 15, 20-year outlook, so that you don't hit any unexpected waves, I would say, in terms of needing to invest large sums of money all of a sudden and have eventually having huge impacts on people's wallets at home. So this technology is all about supporting that.
Cool. Okay, well, I know your time is valuable here, so I would like to take a second to thank you for joining me today. If someone wanted to reach out to get to know you better, to connect,
sure,
what would be the best way?
Well, there's a few ways. Like I said, you can go to envari.com and click on the Contact Us form, and that information always comes back in. I get to see all of that myself as well. I'm on LinkedIn, available that way, and those are really the best
Perfect.
ways. Or call into Envari direct. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, and I could probably go on forever.
You're very passionate.
It's a passion, for sure.
Good.
It's a passion.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of ThinkEnergy. If so, please head on over to iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe. Also, be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about us. It's very much appreciated. We'd love to hear from you, so check us out on hydroottawa.com. Thank you for listening.